Hey everybody, it's Matt C. Wanted to do a quick video on a couple topics, couple interesting topics that I care about, topics that you care about. One is just jump right into it. Casey Jones is now Cassandra, and it's funny, like just kind of going through the comments here. It looks unfinished. It looks bland. Uh, Let's see, it's to the point why even give her that name if it's not even going to be close. So a lot of people are trying to figure out, they don't like it, and I don't think they know why. I guess she doesn't have a Hoggy mask, which is kind of a problem. She's got like an L-shaped, I don't even know what kind of blade I mean, that looks like a hockey stick, but obviously, I don't know. They made up a hockey stick shaped blade. I guess that's kind of cool, but this is just kind of what happens. Just disclaimer, this is not going to be a take you're going to see a lot of people have. This is me kind of coming at it 10,000 feet, being a big fan of TMNT when I was a kid. Haven't kept up with it since being an adult, and I don't know, I just kind of look back and I say I'm seeing the amount of franchises that are profitable, that people kind of can bank on, that companies can bank on, is shrinking, not growing. No one's made any IP of any substance or longevity in the past 10 years. And more people are just kind of going to a smaller and smaller pool of what's left, what hasn't been I don't know, strangled. And as people want more diverse, and by diverse they mean inalienable qualities, immutable qualities, like gender, sexuality, ethnicity. I mean, you're gonna have to gender swap. You're gonna have to race swap. That's the only thing left. I mean, if you're gonna make new content based off of old IPs, not invest in new IPs, and you're gonna diversify the programming that you see, I mean, there's only one option. So, I mean, having that said, I think it's kind of a cool design. It's pretty simple. I guess it's like kind of basic ninja-ish. A lot of people don't like the armbands and waistbands. That's an animation trick. When you have skinny places on the body, it's good to put something that describes the form on that skinny part. I forgot, I think there's a term for that. I don't remember what it's called, but that kind of gives you can tell now, because there's not a lot of volume. They're not going to put a lot of highlights and shadows on it. I mean, not more than they normally would, just to describe the form. So the way they have to describe the form is with those lines. That's just kind of a trick. I like it. I do it with Myra. That's why she's got elbow and wrist pads and knee pads, for the same reason. But yeah, I mean, she kind of looks like a serial killer. That could be some people's thing. It's clearly drawn by talented people, but I don't know. That's kind of a weird reveal. But and yet inevitable, because if you want new content, if if you want to do it in a better way, you're gonna have to do it with new content. I think most people agree on that. That's gonna take people, viewers like you and me, investing. Basically, the consumer needs to invest in new content, and give stuff a shot. I think we as consumers have been trained to care about old content more. Obviously, there's a lot of heartstrings that can be pulled in old content, so nostalgia is a safer bet, and that's just been developed as nerd culture became the main marketing demographic the past 15 years. Yeah, that's just been the approach. But this is something else I wanted to bring up. I think this is more interesting. Cassandra Casey Jones as Cassandra is just kind of we've seen it a bunch, and we know what happens. And the only thing that's interesting to me is some of these comments. I think the gender swap is kind of the old argument that doesn't feel uh, uh, productive, I guess, anymore. I don't know if people are fine with it now. They might be. These are the classic sort of things you think about. Was it 2014 Ghostbusters remake with all girls? People were glad to say that it wasn't funny, it was boring, but mainly it's gender swapping for the sake of gender swapping, and that's dumb, and people boycott for reasons like that. I don't know if people are as interested in doing that nowadays, but or maybe people are developing bigger and better, more I don't know, better arguments, maybe subtler arguments, because you know, a female character isn't necessarily worse than a male character. I don't think a lot of people are saying that. I don't think they ever have, that I've seen. But people, I don't know, people are evolving. The design works, but not as KC, deviates a bit far from the source, so they kind of they want a one-to-one replacement more, in a way. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting, or maybe it's more people are kind of waking up to be kind of lazy. Well, I don't know about lazy even, but the smaller fish pond and the same number of fish in the pond, but the pond keeps getting smaller. There's only so many IPs that companies invest in, and there's a smaller number of IPs that consumers will give a chance to. So nostalgia brands still they don't garner as much attention as they used to 5 or 10 years ago, but they still garner more attention than stuff that's fresh out of nowhere. So yeah, companies know that, consumers know that, and this is just the effect of that. So maybe there's more people who are waking up to that and saying, providing their fresh opinions, maybe stuff that they would have been fine with 5 years ago. Now they're just think it's kind of old hat. So I'm seeing like a diversification of criticism, which I think is interesting. And that kind of gets us back to okay, so this is a thread by Sarah Momo Bami, who pitched to a big animation company that produces animation shows. Let's just go ahead and assume that's Nickelodeon, because they produced Avatar. I'm just gonna guess that. I like the Arabic here. That's interesting. So she says, a while ago I announced on my Twitter I was excited to pitch to a huge company that produces animated shows. Let me tell you why diversity, quote-unquote, discourse in animation is actually hurting people behind the scenes. You want to pitch future shows that look something like this. So Sarah here is, I think, well, it's safe to say she's of African descent, of recent African descent, and if not, continues to live there. And yeah, so she's finding some difficulty. The company I pitched to, Split the Tea. I wonder who says Split the Tea. It's a fun phrase. On how they produced a show that was diverse, i.e. Body types, LGBT+, all girls, and instead of releasing a trailer for the show, the creators talked about how diverse the show was and used it as a selling point. It's got immense backlash. So now the company will look at a show that has any semblance of diversity, themes, POC, women cast, brighter toned, and not give it a chance. Brighter toned. Oh, is that kind of like brighter, or like more color, I guess? I don't know. I'll have some things to say about this lady's perspective in a second, but not to give it a chance because they believe it won't make them money. So F, the creators use, quote, diversity as a selling point instead of promoting the story, because then a person who wants to pitch a story with an authentic, diverse cast, not for the purpose of promoting diversity, gets put on the back burner because executives will think it'll flop like the other show that they funded, i.e. This is me speaking here, i.e. The show that they mismanaged in marketing. So they they attribute the diversity to being the problem, which I find a little, well, I'm suspect that shows are scared of diversity. Maybe of LGBT plus stuff, but I don't think color or gender, the brighter toned cast is something that most shows are worried about or hesitant about. And then she goes on to blame progressive white women, progressive looking white women, because meanwhile, women in animation, so that's a basically kind of a union for women in animation, is a scam, and the white showrunners of these LGBT progressive shows hire only other white women. And it just goes on and on. There's a lot of interesting things. I do recommend you read her entire thread, but I think the meat is at the she front-loaded the content, and so we can just go ahead and talk about this. I think this is a little more interesting than Cassandra. So people generally don't change their mind unless they think it's they almost never change their mind. I'd be hard pressed to think of an example where people do change their mind fundamentally on a worldview level, unless they feel that it's safer to do so. That it's so it's socially safe. If it feels like socially satisfying, if it also feels emotionally satisfying, if you feel like getting that off your chest, especially on Twitter in 2020, is going to be better than not doing it, and also intellectually satisfying. If you feel like you have an argument that's consistent with your values or consistent with the principles that you want to live by, maybe you were pursuing those principles and you went in an opposite direction, playing them out, and things didn't work out, and you're discovering that it's more it's intellectually satisfying, it's actually more consistent with your values to go in a different direction and attack the sort of stuff that maybe you wanted to be a part of in the recent past. So I think this is part of a sea change. I think the criticisms you'll see against Cassandra Jones are similar to the sort of criticism you see at a higher level here with people who are pitching shows. It's that there's a greater number of people, more than what you saw if you just look through like 2015 comments on YouTube for the Ghostbusters movie or something. There's a larger, there's a bigger tent of people, there's a bigger coalition of people who are finding that the approach, the method of kind of using people basically for that's becoming the popular narrative. You're going to see this more and more. I guess defining stories based on the immutable characteristics of the characters in the plot, and pitching that as a value in itself is actually takes people who have found themselves to be on the outside culturally, minorities, and keeps them in a minority spot, on an elevated spot, but very much so in a kind of segregated sort of narrative apartheid, if I could say that, where they're there to fill a particular role. They're there to sell a superficial kind of perspective of what the same groups of people, according to Sarah Momobami, the same quote-unquote progressive-looking white women, stories that they themselves like, that progressive-looking white women like, that appeal to their own particular sensibilities, I guess, is it seems to be the trend that I'm seeing people, and this is me just kind of observing this over the past few years. You know, your perspective might be slightly different, but that's kind of what I'm seeing, is people want stories from all different backgrounds and people of all different perspectives. I don't see people railing against that. I think when it comes to legacy IPs, I think people want to see that you do try to do new stuff with new characters, and you don't try to replace old characters with you don't try to erase white men from legacy stories. Obviously, that's the definition of a zero-sum game, and everyone is going to lose in zero-sum games of that sort. And when it comes to more interesting stuff, to me, I'm not necessarily interested in the sort of genre of second generation Avatar, Last Airbender, but I do like Avatar-y, like Amero manga, Euro manga type stuff, where people are trying to do this sort of yeah, like I said, like it's Avatar, but with different cultures. So Avatar kind of showed us that you can do Inuit cultures in a fantasy genre, as well as Chinese and many other cultures, which is pretty cool. Stuff that we hadn't seen fantasyized. People are just discovering that this is kind of like an inroad to doing even more. It doesn't have to be like a Eurocentric medieval, you know, Tolkien-esque fantasy, which I'm all about. I love that. I like to see any genre when it gets decentralized culturally. I think that's a good thing. I think that keeps things interesting. I think we learn more. I think we get more excited. We get surprised more, and yeah, there's just more imagination at play when that sort of thing happens. And it takes telling new stories in new directions to do that. Not with not with Casey Jones gender swapping, in my opinion, but with new stories like this. That if I were, I don't know, if this was I don't think this is marketed to me in terms of I don't know, looks a little bit young, and it's more for a female audience, which is 100% fine. But I'm not a female audience. But I'd like to, yeah, I'd like to see more people call this sort of stuff out. These are people who are would identify. I mean, she's. I think everything in the bio tells me that this is a person who considers herself progressive. We don't need to. Who knows? I'm gonna get myself in trouble looking through her thread. She identifies as progressive, and we're seeing this a lot of people who are of a left-leaning or even far left perspective on race and gender identity, and the progressive stack are finding that the approach of the last few years has actually been counterproductive, and I would 100% agree. There was an Asian lady, young lady of who won a I don't know. I did a live stream on it. She won best novel, and it was at the oh no, the Sci-Fi Fantasy Awards just like 3 weeks ago, and she said that this is exact. She had a very similar take, that people only want her for her gender and her race. That's why they want her there, and she's from China, and she's telling stories set in China. I don't know if that's her choice. I'm assuming she had some agency in that, but she clearly feels stereotypes, and yeah. So just wrapping it up, people don't change their mind unless they feel like socially they have an avenue for doing this, where they can basically continue to have their status as influencers. If they are an influencer, they want to keep that. They're not going to give that up just to change their opinion on something important. Just speaking frankly. I wonder what word I needed here. Some dumb curse word. Oh, I liked it. people don't change their mind unless they have social room to do that. If they feel intellectually that they're keeping to the principles that they set out to maintain and to begin with, so they have a principled reason, which I do think she's laid out here. And emotionally, and this goes for anyone. Everyone has to feel emotionally satisfied with their conclusion, so it has to feel like it's less stressful to hold the approach that they're taking, the worldview that they're taking. So I think a lot of people are shifting in this direction, and I think it's interesting. So watch the influencers as they continue in increasing numbers to change their mind on how representation happens in stories, and how the kind of filling your card with POCs and LGBTs just for the sake of doing it isn't good enough. The story has to be good. There's going to be people on the left who are going to continue to say this because they dominate entertainment, and they're going to find common cause with people on the right, which I think is really interesting. And I think a greater kind of decentralized coalition of people who just want good storytelling from all persuasions and backgrounds. There's not some sort of supremacy conspiracy, I think, afoot. This is just people who they want something. A particular approach has been tried. It has not. It's not actually producing the outcome that people wanted, and so a different approach is being asked for, and it happens to be an approach that I tend to agree with. I think it's a more mature, it's a thoughtful approach of understanding who your characters are, basically, and who your characters are helps you to understand what they are. The what is, what value of skin tone they have, and what anatomically you're finding in their midsection. The who is the story of these characters. And telling who-driven stories, I think, is going to lead to everyone kind of being happy, regardless of the what. There's a lot of room for what diversity when the who stories are fantastically written. So anyways, that's my video for tonight. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope to make these kind of sporadically, but when there's something that I think is important and it's needs to be addressed, and I think I have a particularly interesting take, and I don't want to think about writing a Twitter thread on it. And more people enjoy YouTube over Twitter, it seems. I'm just gonna put these out there. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you guys later.